in the last 10 years, we believe we have made very significant progress. And I would attribute the progress to the fact that we have embarked on a series of efforts which feed into each other, making it much easier to do business in the country, improving the ease of living, which is reducing the bureaucratic load on the average citizen, radically improving the infrastructure through a program called Gati Shakti, which in fact has a very strong application of multiple kinds of technologies, putting in place what has been a remarkably effective digital public infrastructure. And I'd like to share some thoughts with you about that. Improving the quality of governance overall, and in my view, actually ensuring the political stability which allows for decisions taken to be implemented in full and for new decisions to build on earlier ones. Now, I put this to you in terms of a description, but often I'm in situations where I have 5 minutes to impress somebody from abroad who wants to know, okay, what's happening in India. So I want to give you that 5-minute description. Actually, it's not even 5 minutes, probably 1 minute. I tell people, please understand today's India. Today's India, if I were to pick 5 numbers, is building 28 kilometers of highway every day. It's building 12 to 14 kilometers of railway track every day, quite apart from the Vande Bharat trains which have been introduced, which I would invite you to ride on next time any of you are in India. Which had 6 cities with metros a decade ago, which has 21 today, and we are planning an additional 39 to take. Which has on average built 7 to 8 new airports every year for the last decade. A decade ago we had 75 airports, today we are close to 150. Which, by the way, as a result of all of this, has about 1,000 planes on order from the international aviation industry, which has actually doubled down on its education system. Now, this gives you a kind of a snapshot of the changes underway. Now, it's not my contention that those are adequate. On the contrary, aspirational India today demands that, these are seen in many ways today as basic requirements. So, we are addressing a lot of legacy needs, but certainly we hope that the expectations of society actually lead to higher performance and higher delivery in this regard. Now, this is one part of the change which has happened. The other part of the change is probably less visible to many of us. Less visible because many of us come from middle-class families, mostly urban. So we don't directly always experience, and I'm sure there may be some exceptions here. We don't always directly experience how the digital public infrastructure actually has delivered, particularly outside urban areas, including in urban areas, but also to those who are, I would say, of a lower income and who are socio-economically more vulnerable. And again, I want to give you some ideas of numbers. We have a program to build houses to those whose income levels are low. In the last 10 years, 35 million houses have been built and delivered, which means about, roughly given Indian family size, which means about 160 million people are living in houses today, which they did not have a decade ago. Let's look at health. Some of you may have heard of a scheme called Ayushman Bharat. Now, the idea is to provide free or subsidized health care for those who are deserving. The users of this today number 530 million, which is roughly, the numbers, about 40% of the total population. Also that there are a lot of people who depend on government rations, on public food distribution for their nutrition. Now, during the COVID period, we took a decision that we would expand the nutritional support, because at that time a lot of people, in fact, had a loss of employment or income. Today, we give direct food support to 815 million people, which is almost 2/3 of the country. Water, which in many developed societies would be taken for granted, but again, those of you who remember some of the circumstances in some parts of India know it's been a challenge. That actually roughly about little more than 1/3 of the country, 500 million people, have been covered by what is called the Jal Jeevan Mission. And even if you look in terms of entrepreneurship, the small loans that are given out, and a disproportionate number of these are actually given out to women. In the last decade, close to about 350 million loans have been given out. So I put this to you, that this is not just a society, which is changing at a sort of a visible level in the urban areas, in those places where you would naturally go to when you go to India. But if you go even to